Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. We have an interesting episode for you today where we're going to talk about leadership skill development and have some different takes to kind of help you think about ways to cultivate those skills. And even if you're not in a leadership position, these sort of skills can be useful in your career or personal endeavor. But before we jump into it, please be sure to share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. We're on all of them, and want to give a shout out to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push, as well as his best-selling Amazon book, Mindset is My Degree, for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
Thank you, Will. Hello, winners. Happy Monday.
Here we go. Monday, let's go. So, back in the day, there was this song called OPP by Naughty by Nature. And I did a video once a long time ago called, IDP, yeah, you know me. But today, IDP for Individual Development Plan. It's an acronym we use. But actually, we're going to dive into skill development and leadership. So before we jump into it, just a quick plug. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about a number of books that were highly influential to Nick and I in shaping our worldview and around with leadership. So if you haven't listened to that and this topic is of interest to you, highly encourage you check last week's episode. But let's talk about this week's episode. Any high-level thoughts you wanted to share today?
Well, I believe that if you are listening, it means that you are willing to get better at being a leader, or you want to build your own business, and be an entrepreneur. And who doesn't want to get better? And so we're going to dive into how and what tools to use in order to be able to increase your productivity, increase your, how people can perceive your actions and your training, your coaching, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important, I believe, that people have a plan to get better at what they're currently doing in order to improve and, improve eventually their team, region, and et cetera.
I agree. So let's go with one of our favorite segments. Let's see if we can sync up now like we used to. We had a stretch of like 6 months of perfect syncing, and then we kind of fell off the turnip truck. But ready?
Ready?
Quotes and quips. Woohoo! There we go. Nice. All right. So first one is from John Maxwell. So again, I won't do this again this episode, but that was one of the books we talked about last week, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. But his quote is, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." Thought on that one?
Yeah, I mean, you need to improve yourself to be able to teach and coach others. So once you master something, when you feel comfortable about doing something and you experience it yourself, your capability to actually share this with others increase because you did it yourself, you experience, you tweak it probably as well. You know what works, what doesn't work, and you can coach it better. So I love this quote from John Maxwell, one of the best speaker of our time.
Yes, I agree. And I think one of the frameworks, so we'll dive this, we'll kind of interweave it with the educational piece or skill development, is the framework called show, share, observe as leadership. So it fits right with that. It's one thing to tell somebody what to do. It's another thing to show them, embody it, role plays, let them observe you or observe somebody else, can really enrich in the skill development and understanding of what good looks like. All right, next is a quip. I think this one, I'm so glad I found this right away because this is totally up your alley. In fact, I'm kind of worried you might jump out of your seat on this one. But the quip is from Thomas Sowell.
Mm-hmm.
People who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything.
Yeah. Now, if people listen to us from the beginning, I think they really understand how I feel about meeting. It's a disease that a lot of people have, and I think it's very sad. A meeting should be done because you want to have a solution or an action at the end of the meeting. If a meeting is not something that can help my team, myself, I do not join.
Mm-hmm.
If it's mandatory, I'm joining. But if it's mandatory, it's usually going to be a waste of time, because mandatory means if I don't make it mandatory, nobody shows up.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what it means. A real leader or people who want to get better, they don't need to see mandatory. They need to see the topic. They need to see who are going to be giving that topic, and they want to be there.
Right.
So a meeting should have automatically something at the end of the 30 minutes at the end of an hour should have a resolution or change of action or anything that nature. And unfortunately 99% of the meetings, and I'm not talking about the company I'm with right now, but in general 99% of the meeting are just meeting because people don't know what to do, and let's put a meeting in the agenda because it's going to be valuable, and majority of the time it's not, and it's sad.
I agree. I think a lot of times meetings are space fillers, time fillers. Like they use up the time, especially if there's not a clear agenda before they meet. They can just get on rambling and things like that. And at the beginning of the year we did our New Year's resolutions, and one of the things I was really looking to build upon was, if it's an informational meeting, like a one-way information, either using video
Email.
or email, and then leaving live meeting times for discussion, where you're trying to your point, solve for things, discuss, try to get to the root problem of things so that you can identify it and then solution it. And I've been good with that. I've been really
Yeah,
good with
no, I
that,
know.
to not use one way information style meetings for live time with people. They can listen to it on their own time or read it
I
on their
agree.
own time.
And I have two things to add. If in your agenda you see in a meeting when it says update, that's a waste of time meeting. An update should be sent by email.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it should be, you know?
Right.
And that's the reason why I'm known in some part of organization for not reading my emails. And that's the reason why. Because if it's important, I will hear it 75 times in 75 different meetings we have. So why reading emails?
Yeah.
You know, that's the worst part for me, is a meeting like that and then receive a recap email when they literally say everything they just said for an hour. Why don't just send the mail and not have the meeting? If the meetings are gonna be targeted like it should be, I'm gonna read the emails
Mhm.
because it's valuable. But if the email is a recap of the recap of the recap, that's I don't understand. That number one. Number two is, let's make sure that we understand the difference between a meeting for a meeting and a coaching session.
Mhm.
You know, I'm all about having one-on-ones, having team meetings and things like that. I don't put that in the same bucket. So this is a time where we get together as a team, for example, for a team meeting, where we can, like, share best practices, like get better at something, or things of that nature. When you have a one-on-one, it's a coaching session when you want to understand what's happening and how I can help, or how I can sync someone with someone else to help that person,
Mhm.
understanding what's happening in the team and if there is anything that I need to act on or help with. So that's very different. This is a coaching time, even though it's
Mhm.
called a meeting. All right. When I talk about meeting, is meeting to put in a calendar. We wonder what is it for, or if it's a cadence. You know,
Yeah.
I in companies before, and even this one, when we have partners, and usually the first thing that we do when we set the stage, oh, let's schedule a cadence call. Why setting a cadence call with a partner? Why? I understand if you have X amount of very important account with that change constantly, and you need to be aware of all the change, but it's majority of the time not the case in most business. So why not? My best partnership with my partner, the partner who work the best are those where we don't have those, but we are very close to each other when it comes to, hey, here, this happened. I want you to be aware of what can we do about this. Let's jump on a call.
Mhm.
No need to plan a meeting every week when we look at each other's eyes and said, how you doing today? Good. How was the weekend? And then after 20 minutes, I'll say, by the way, anything to add on for work? because it's literally how it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's valuable, and I don't think that it should be on the calendar if it's for that.
I
But
knew this quip would touch a button with
sorry,
you.
I'm done. I'm done. I talk way too much.
I knew it. I knew it. I was like, oh, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, this is gonna light a fire.
Well, sorry.
No need to apologize. It's true. Hey, this is about a mindset podcast, so
Hmm.
it's important. So make it matter. If you're gonna schedule time, make it meaningful, make it matter. Don't schedule time just to schedule time's sake. Like time is our most constrained resource. Use it wisely. All right, let's jump into skill development for leadership. So, a lot of different ways we can go about this. Any particular way you want to kick
Uh,
it off with?
Absolutely. I want to ask you because you are, I mean, I've had a lot of leaders in my life, and you're probably the best, or you are the best when it comes to helping people develop to be better on what they're doing.
Oh, thank you.
And what I love about the way you do it is that you don't try to add things to how people are, what their strengths are only. Or what the weakness are, or should I say it?
Mhm.
But you are the opposite. You look at the strengths of someone, and you want them to be not be great, but be the best at that specific topic. And so your way to think changed my way to think as well. Instead of looking at what can we add so the person has more tool in the toolbox, is what tool are they great at, and make it that they are invincible in that specific area.
Mhm.
So if you can explain a little bit your thought process about that, and how you are doing that with your teams.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. I think for me, one of the things that I evolved was that instead of focusing on people's weaknesses, because if somebody's not strong at something, unless they're like very early in their career where there's a lot of things that they can develop, but if they've been, several years in their career, if they're not strong at something, it doesn't come innate to them, right? So they can put a lot of time and effort into something just to get it average and maybe a little below average. Whereas I believe if you focus on strengths, you get far more exponential benefit because if it's something you're strong with, it's innate to you, you can get further on the road to mastery. And so, one of the frameworks I use in terms of the skill development is what I call the 2+1. So, focus on two strengths for every one opportunity. So, you want to raise the floor, right? And do that. But you want to put most of your time on your skill development, augmenting your strengths. And that could be any number of things. I think a few mistakes, in my opinion, I see people do besides focusing too much on weaknesses or area of opportunity is they focus on role, not skills. So if
Mhm.
they desire a role, they focus on the role aspect. But I'm a firm believer if you focus on the skills, skills are transferable and roles change. Your
Mhm.
desire for certain roles may change, but skills are everlasting. So focus on skills, not a role. Now, if you are focused on a role that requires a unique set of skills you don't have, then sure, map it. Like, for instance, I wanted to become a global leader. I had leadership experience in the United States, but I wanted to be more well rounded and I wanted to lead a global organization. So I learned like what are some cultural nuances? What are some things to consider? How do you manage your calendar with different time zones and things like that? But it was part of an overall strength of like process. The second thing or the third thing, I guess I should say, that I've seen people make mistakes on is they have the skill be too big or too broad. So let's take communication, for example. Somebody says, I want to be a better communicator. Well, there's a lot of different ways you can communicate. You can communicate in one on one meetings, you can communicate in small group settings, you can be communicating to larger groups, you could be communicating via email. There's video. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think getting a little more granular about the skills. So instead of saying, for example, I'm going to focus on my communication skills. Let's say you really want to augment how you partner with other people. I would narrow that a little further. I would go, let's look at influential communication skills or social contracting skills or even negotiation skills, right? Which is a little more granular. Or if it's like presentations, and it's very different if you're presenting to peers versus if you're presenting to the C-suite. So, just being specific, maybe a level or two deeper so that you can really zero in, and then that'll help help you define what are the educational resources you could use, what are the experiences you could seek out to help hone that skill, or what is the exposure? Like, how do you get people to play like the connector manager, which is what you referred to earlier in one of your comments about connecting with other
Hmm.
people, because diversity is a strength. And so I'll wrap up my little segment here by saying I a while ago, I would say, I don't know, in the last 10 years, I gave up trying to be great at everything. I'm just like, you know what? It's not my wheelhouse. And instead of beating myself up about it, I'm just like, these are things that I'm pretty decent at. I'm going to focus on those. And then as I have opportunities come up, whether it's teammates, leadership team that I try to fill, I'm not saying I will screen people out who don't have certain skills, but if they have certain skills that I consider for myself weaknesses, that's an advantage to them in that process because it can create a more well-rounded leadership team. And so I've really gotten really good at, instead of beating myself up like I used to all the time mentally, like why do I stink at this? Why can't I be better? Blah 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 blah. I'm just like, no, you know what? I know your strengths, know your opportunities, give yourself grace, focus on your strengths, augment them, find others who can help in the areas that you're not as strong.
I love it. I think that the message is, I mean, you got a lot of good points there, but I think what's important is to be more granular and more focusing on not the broader, but be more targeted and specific in what you want to achieve. I have two follow-up questions with that.
Mhm.
Can you give an example of two things? First is, um, for example, you mentioned that before become global leader, you needed to learn or you needed to figure it out ways. First is, what were the steps that you made in order to become great at it, because now you are, and you are extremely well versed with it. And secondly, as a leader, how are you coaching people? You already mentioned that a little bit at the end, by connecting people, by being better. But can you maybe have like an example of what are you doing yourself to become great or better at something you want to achieve for a role, but also how you coach someone to get even better at something they're already great at?
Yeah, no, great questions. I would say, I talked to a lot of peers and colleagues who had either global leadership experience or who were leaders in the region that I was now going to be leading. So, for example, we have offices in the UK and Spain. And so I talked to people who were in those areas to kind of get the lay of the land, so to speak. We also have offices in APAC, particularly Sydney and Singapore. So again, same thing. Um, and then I did read online through some reputable sources because I do want to caution against putting too much weight into generalizations.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'll just give a generalizations. Aussies are very direct. In some ways, they kind of equate to people who are in New York as like a generalization, but that's not true for
Hmm.
all of them, right? There's been some that have been very introverted, very quiet, not very
Amiable.
direct.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, you take it with a grain of salt, but like some of the laws now, like the office hours differed. Like here in the
Mm.
States, it was 8 to 5. Other places, it's 8:30 to 4:30. And so I was wondering, like, why is somebody never having any meetings at 8 o'clock? And I'm like, oh, well, there we go. So it's an education thing. Certainly, labor laws differ in the different countries, and that I leveraged our HR partners. I read up on it. So, there's a lot of resources out there, but I'll tie it into one of the things that initially was a little bit surprising to me is that there are far more things in common than are things that are different with the different cultures. And I found that very refreshing. So, like we've talked in the past about appealing to people's nobler motives. Like if people have a vision or they believe in the principle that you're going after, they will go with it. That doesn't matter if they're in the US, it doesn't matter if they're in Europe, doesn't matter if APAC. If they believe, they will strive. If they don't, or they don't have a lot of clarity, there's a disconnect, right? Now, granted, sometimes I have to frame things slightly differently on the regions, but most people want to do well at what they do. They want to support themselves and their loved ones. They want to have good work-life balance. Um, so those things were common. So it actually made me feel much better and much more capable as I started leading global teams to realize far more similarities and differences. Um, to the second part of your question about like how to it was coach and develop people to
Hmm.
be strong. Again, it's kind of like Simon Sinek, start with why. So why are they doing the role? What were they hoping to achieve with it? Is it the same as what they thought as what they first started? What have they learned? Where has some of the light become a little tarnished with it, right? Which
Hmm.
sometimes happen. It's just addressing it. But I think the key thing is you have to make sure the foundation is strong. And the first thing is you have to build trust and rapport with people. And the best way to do that is to become interested in others. So asking them questions. And again, in some cultures, it takes a bit. They don't share things personally as freely. You don't want to push it. Like again, you test it. It's kind of like dipping your toe in the water. If they respond, great, build upon it. If they don't, go a different route. But I think for them, it was always like, what do you consider your strengths are? Why do you consider those strengths? Is it just something you believe in yourself? Did you get feedback from clients? Did you get feedback from peers or a former supervisor? Like, why do you think that's a strength? Give me an example of how you use this strength to build upon it, and to see how it's good. So it's really going through that exercise, and it's not like an interview or
Hmm.
interrogation. Obviously, it happens over time, but you find out what makes people tick. You find out how coachable they are. Are they closed minded, open minded, growth mindset, fixed mindset? And then you adapt your coaching style accordingly. But I've always been a big believer in um, finding out about the person first, aligning resources that mirror to their strengths, and then connect them with people who also either mirror their strengths or their area of opportunities so that they can expedite the learning curve. So I'll
I love
pause
it.
there and then see what you.
No, I love that, and it's so true. You need to be curious about the people. And you mentioned a lot about the trust based value added. So you first have the trust, and then you add the value for the person, and then the whatever you say will have a greater impact because you went to the first phase. If you want to go to value first without having the trust, the value will probably never get in, or people will be a lot slower to adapt it because it didn't go to the first phase first. So I really love that. I like what you mentioned about like picking the brains of people in Barcelona and Singapore and other places. And it's true to not being from Europe. It was the same over there, but it was closer to me because it was a lot of different. I mean, it's a lot of countries,
Oh, sure.
and they all are different. When you talk to a German, when you have a business, I was in a company for 10 years in Hamburg Mannheimer, which is in Hamburg in Germany. Well, when you could talk with people over the board, it's very different than when you talk to people in Belgium or in France, and definitely in Holland when they are a lot more like, slow pace, we say.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's definitely a lot of difference. People act differently based on the language.
Hmm.
Like when you talk to people coming from France, usually when you are living over there, it's harder because they just don't understand all the time the nuance of the language, like
Hmm.
things like that. So I love the fact that you've been through this and that you realize that it opened your eyes about what it is actually to work with people from different places. Now, the final question I personally have for you, and I have my idea, but I just want to know, people listening to this may think, oh well, I'm a leader myself, I'm a whatever title you have, and I'm so busy, I don't have always the time for myself to actually develop myself or to help develop others. What, in your experience, is a percentage of time during a 40 hours week or something where a person should spend for their own development and spend to develop their team?
Yeah, it's a great question. We encourage, and I encourage people in leadership positions should be spending about 60% of their time coaching and developing
Hmm.
others. I feel you get far more exponential benefit to the business and the economics of the business when you do that. So 60% of the time should be coaching, whether that, like what you're mentioning earlier, could be one-on-one,
Hmm.
could be small group. There's a lot of different ways you can coach,
Absolutely.
but spending time coaching. I think for personally, I'm going to blur the lines a little bit because I do recommend people block a decent chunk of time. Let's say 2 hours, just for an example, because if you block 30 minutes, that's easy to have something else bleed into it, even an hour. But if you do a 2 hour chunk, that's good. But I think people should also consider their habits. And what I mean by that is, let's take X. So I will follow, there's certain sports things I follow on X, right? That's on my feed. There's also different things like I follow neuroscience news because I'm always
Mm-hmm.
interested in how the brain works and how I follow psychology today because again, a lot of times it's trying to understand how people
Mm-hmm.
connect. I follow Forbes. I follow Harvard Business Review. I follow MIT Sloan Management. So I'm getting these like, headlines of these different articles, and if something resonates with me, then I read it. And one of the things that I do is every Monday, I kind of after this podcast, I send out a Monday mindset email, and it's usually a recommendation of something I've read that I feel people would benefit from. And it's not all just business. A lot of it is like soft skills, like how to manage stress, the difference between stress and eustress, right? There's one is
Mm,
constructive, the other is destructive.
distracted.
Yeah, just try to make it well rounded so you cast it. But those are kind of like the high level thoughts. I want to be sensitive to time, but you said you had some things in your mind too. So what are
No,
some
no,
things
no.
you want to
I
share?
mean, it depends, of course, from week to week, from time to time. We have like busier season than other, like in majority of business people listening to us. So, but what I think is important is that you don't neglect the part where you are working on yourself.
Hmm.
If you're an entrepreneur, because I know we have a lot of entrepreneur listening that maybe not have the structure that we're talking about, it's important that you have X amount of time that you spend to get better on your craft without looking at only get better at the business that you currently have,
Hmm.
because it's gonna expand your horizon, expand your mindset, and maybe open your eyes to other opportunities that you may have within your business or outside your business.
Hmm.
But if you only focus on what's in front of your nose, you will only get better in what's in front of your nose,
Hmm.
and you're losing track of a lot of things. So if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, spend some time to develop yourself at something. It can be, like you mentioned, soft skills or not, but it's important that you do that. And if you work for a company, I would be shocked if a leader ever tell you, what's that? You should not spend any time doing this for yourself. It's probably a manager, it's not a leader then.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like you block 2 hours for 40 hours agenda. It's 6% of your time.
Right.
You know, how much time do you spend on 40 hours that are not useful? We talk about meetings, but there are so many different things that you spend time not doing. Or you have a meeting, who stopped 20 after 20 minutes and is 30. What are you doing during those 10 minutes? Are you directly going on something else, or are you just, oh, I have 10 minutes, I will just relax and just scroll on Facebook?
Hmm.
You have a lot of waste during a day. We all do. We all
Hmm.
have. We're all human. But if you analyze it properly, 6% of your time as an employee to work on yourself should be beneficial not only for you, but for the company as well. So please do not forget to learn, to keep learning. It's a never ending learning journey. Like we talk about John Maxwell in the beginning. That's what
Yeah.
he keeps saying. You will die with tons of knowledge that you missed. But
Right.
if you don't, want to get better for yourself, you will not even scratch the surface of what you're capable of doing. So give yourself a favor and work on yourself, work on personal development. And like Will mentioned, do not do something just for the role you have, but build the skills that will make you better for so variety of different position or businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just wrap up by saying a few things. Totally agree with everything you said. One is you got to have discipline with your calendar management. So if you don't have time to coach your team or you don't have time to invest in yourself, you have a calendar management and a prioritization issue. So that
Hmm.
would be the one opportunity
Hmm.
to kind of build upon. The other thing is, if you think about it from a business term and you think about return on investment, what do you think you're going to get the best return on your investment? Drafting another email to send out or building your capability and skills by honing it. You'll get far more often. You're going to get far more of an ROI investing in yourself, but you got to put in the time. And the last thing I'll just say is don't just read about stuff, put it into practice, test it out. I'll end with this quick example. I was reading about Jeff Bezos and how he runs meeting at Amazon. You know, they do not use PowerPoints at Amazon. None.
You share that with me.
Yeah. He sends out a memo, and then they actually, I didn't catch this the first time I read the story, but I'm going to try it next time. They read the memo the first 20 minutes of the meeting. So he makes sure everybody reads it. It's just quiet. And they just sit there and they read it. It's like a 6-page memo or whatever. And then after 20 minutes and everyone's read it, and they go into discussion. And I feel like I tried it, but I sent the memo in advance because I didn't catch the part of the first 20 minutes. But I will say it was a more productive meeting because people had the context. They understood what we're trying to solve for or solution. And then we got into it in a good way in the meeting on productive conversation. So I'm going to, so that's an example. I could have just read that story, been like, oh, that's cute, and then let it dissipate and float out. Or you can try. And that's the whole thing. We've talked about this a million times. Try. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You learn, you grow, you do something else. But if it does and it resonates, now you're being more efficient and effective, as well as building your skills.
I love it. And there are worse people to follow than Bezos, right? I think he made a couple of dollars doing what he's doing.
He's made some good decisions, and against some of the advice he was given from some of his people, and he just went forward anyway, and it proved to be true. So you got to tip of the cap to the person. He built an empire.
100%.
Yeah. So there you have it, winners. If this kind of resonated with you, happy to go deeper in the future episodes about skill development as leaders. And again, check out last week's episode if you want some book recommendations. And I named some periodicals that I personally look at during today's episode as well. But that'll do it for this Monday Mindset. Please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow 2 for the Win on your favorite platform. And shout out again to nickmenard.com, the 1% push in his Amazon best-selling book, Mindset is My Degree, for sponsoring today's episode. So that'll do it. We'll see you next Monday, winners.
Bye, winners.